now. And if you, the recording and the presentation will be shared on our website afterwards. So on the agenda today, we have first a little bit of welcome, and then my colleague Inne Lippens will share the findings of the Share.Vlaanderen project in Flanders, where we examined the opportunities and the challenges for interoperable car sharing. And this was also part of the, supported by the Flemish government and also part of the Interreg eHubs project. As thirdly, we will have some interoperable car sharing experts that will bring the theory to practice. We have someone from Cambio Deutschland, we have someone from Share for Mobility in Belgium, and someone from Somobilitat and the Mobility Factory in Spain. The last part of this webinar will be a Q&A. We have around 30 minutes for that, so there's plenty of room for questions. So I'm very excited to host this webinar, and I would like to give the word now to my colleague Inne.
Thank you, Bram. Thank you everyone for being here. As Bram said, I'm going to introduce you in our Share.Vlaanders report and project that we have concerning interoperable car sharing. But first of all, maybe let me introduce Autodelen.net for those amongst you who don't know our organization yet. Autodelen.net is the network organization of car sharing and shared mobility in Flanders and Brussels. And we promote and support the alternate use of transport modes. And this way we want to make sure that everyone can meet his or her mobility needs efficiently and with a minimum of space occupation and the optimum use of raw materials. And in this way, we want to contribute to a better living environment. We pursue our mission on various levels and through various activities. And one of them is exploring initiative concepts such as interoperable car sharing. So we started doing it because we saw a couple of years ago that there were evolutions and tendencies, both public and privately, like the creation of MaaS and the surge of that, but also legislation as MITS in Europe and also on the Flemish and Belgian government level that really wanted to foster interoperability amongst different mobility modes. And car sharing, of course, is one of them. And so that was one reason why we really wanted to dive into it and discover how we can manage it, create it, etc. And next to that, we also heard from a lot of stakeholders in our network that it would be a really added value for users when car sharing, when you're a car sharer and you can not only use the cars from the car sharing company you're a member of, but also different other cars in different regions or different models. So it would be an even better alternative for a privately owned car. So those two reasons were the reason why we started the project Share.Vlaanders. Here we did research on the opportunities, the challenges, and we tried to pursue the ideal form of total interoperability in car sharing. I say total because we want to see how interoperability on different levels can be achieved. This is a legal, organizational, semantic, and technical level. We did our research by doing a lot of desk research, interviewing and questioning different stakeholders in the interoperable car sharing ecosystem, and also finding inspiration in already existing car sharing interoperable car sharing initiatives and learning from them as well. And we're very happy that today in this webinar, we have three experts in the fields that are coming to share their experience as well with us today. But first of all, the Share.Vlaanderen project resulted in a theoretical blueprint for car sharing inside, but also outside of Flanders. And this is really a foundation for putting it into practice. So we're hoping that in the future, there will be a broad car sharing system that is interoperable in Flanders and abroad, of course. So I'll share with you quickly our most interesting findings. So first of all, while doing all the research, while talking to all those different people, it became clear that there is already a lot of interoperability and that there are also different levels of interoperability. First of all, there's the internal interoperability, where, for example, one partner can support different independent car sharing groups with, for example, a software. So that's in an internal way being interoperable. Next to that, a level further is the cross-platform interoperability, where different companies are going to work together to offer their cars together to the audience. And next to that, there's the next step is the interoperability towards mass, where we're not only going to link car sharing with each other, but also different mobility modes. So that's really important to see that there's already a lot happening in reality, but the experts are going to talk about that later, of course. Secondly, we discovered some big opportunities why we should invest in interoperable car sharing. Once I already mentioned it earlier, is the added value for the user, for the end user. We also questioned the potential car sharing user and the car sharing users that are already doing car sharing today. And they were really enthusiastic about this idea and this concept. And they also said the existing car sharers today, if there is an interoperable system, I would even recommend it more to my environment and promote it more, because it's an even better alternative for the privately owned cars, because it's in more locations, you have more models, etc., etc. So it's there when you need it even more than it is today. And additionally, something quite interesting is that the majority of the existing car sharers nowadays, they already said, like, I really want to pay a small amount of money for using an interoperable tool. So that gives a lot of perspective as well for actually implementing it and creating it. From the talks we had with the players in the field, car sharing operators, we heard that cooperation is a really interesting feature for setting up interoperable initiatives, both on the fact that you can share resources and share knowledge on different types of the process, like IT and on mainly IT side. And also it's really good to team up together in this, because then car sharing operators have like a better position in negotiations with bigger parties, which could be useful, for example, in talking to mass players. So the sum of the parts is really a lot more than when the total is really a lot more than all the sum of the parts. So 1 + 1 is really 3 in this case. Of course, the way towards interoperable car sharing is not like just one straight road. There are a lot of question marks that we encountered during our research, and we could distinguish 4 categories that were quite important. First of all, on the legal front, there's of course, when you're interoperable, a lot of data that need to be exchanged. There are some questions about, okay, how can we anonymize them? How can we be in line with legislation such as the GDPR on the European level? But secondly, the operational challenges for us, they were quite important here as well. When you build an interoperable system, it became clear that it's easier done when you can standardize a lot of the sub procedures and thing that needs to be done, such as the onboarding of clients, for example, of when there's a car that's broken down, how you can help the clients there. It's evident that it's a lot easier when it's all the same in the different participating car sharing organizations. But at the other hand, in Flanders, we really saw that the USPs of the different car sharing initiatives individually are really important to attract their customers and stand out from the other car sharing initiatives. So it's really the balance that needs to be found, and that's something that's probably going to be take a lot of energy to sort it out. Next to that, also we saw some reluctance towards participating fully in an interoperable car sharing system, because there are various commercial and strategic interest, and they can differ. So that's also a big question mark, how we are going to solve that in the end. Then thirdly, financially, it is not quite clear at the moment how an interoperable car sharing system can be viable and can have a healthy financial model. So that's also something that needs to be found out. And lastly, also on the technical level, we spoke with a lot of parties that are see the profit of an interoperable car sharing system, but they say like, yeah, we don't have a lot of resources, or we lack knowledge on the IT front. So for us, it's quite difficult to work towards it. So also that one is a point that needs to be facilitated and need to be solved before having a successful and broad interoperable car sharing system. So these were really briefly the findings of our research. As I said before, it was all theoretical, but we spoke to a lot of experts on the field, and they are here with us today. So I'd like to give the floor to Joachim Schwarz, the director of Cambio Germany, Tony de Ruiter, who works for Share for Mobility, and Lucas Reichel, who works for Som Mobilitat and is the CEO of the Mobility Factory in Spain and in whole Europe. I suggest that Joachim takes over, introduces the interoperable system they have built up and created, and then Tony can continue, and we close with Lucas, and then the Q&A can follow.
Thank you very much, Ina. Welcome to everybody around. I'm happy you're doing the work for setting up this assembly and preparing with your study, giving me the chance to say a little bit.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, and I would like to share my desk as well. Hopefully this will be this one.
Yes, that's great.
You see my screen? Wonderful.
Yes, perfect.
So let me very briefly introduce you into Cambio. We are a car sharing company operating since 1990, all in all, and we have 160,000 customers in, it's not a joke, it's 111 cities, almost 4,000 cars at about 1,400 stations. And last year's revenue has been 42 million euro. So it's a, let's say, medium-sized car sharing company that we are running here. And we are set up as a company with a central unit that produces software, that produces marketing and buys cars, and does call center services and things like that, and locally independent daughter companies who run the car sharing. And when we just very briefly look at what we're heading to and what we want to create, Ina, it's what you said as well. We want to contribute our part to having more parks and less parkings in the cities. And that's our main company goal. The findings on our side with annual customer service shows that we replace about 13 private cars with one Cambio car. So it could a little bit look like the right part of the picture instead of the left part if we would grow a little bit more than we are at the moment. Now talking about interoperability, this is a map where only the, let's say, the major cities where Cambio operates car sharing are marked with a orange dot, and some partner organizations where we can use cars as well with a blue dot. We do this more or less in almost 10,000 cars and 360 cities. I come back to that slide in a couple of seconds. Should not have been in the show, actually. This is our development in terms of customers. So as you see here, both countries, Germany and Belgium, are developing fast. And if we look at the turnover development, you see a strong dent for the first year of Corona here, and being back on track in 2021. Now we have the map again, and now I can introduce once more this thing that Ina already told us, that we have different levels of roaming. One is within our own IT systems. So that allows you to use 4,300 cars in 125 cities. So this is just very general use within Cambio and some minor cities that use our software but not our brand. The roaming level 2 would be roaming with different IT systems. I will present you in a couple of seconds our cooperation with a system provider, Kantamen, who creates software for Stadtmobil, and with them we have the interoperable possibilities. And from these two versions of roaming, where there are two car sharing companies helping each other by enlarging the net of their stations, by allowing the customers of the other car sharing operator to use these cars, and so for both companies rise the product and make the product better. This is completely different to a situation where we split the system horizontally and have one company serving cars and another company holding customers. So which is the idea of MaaS. So splitting the company into one company who's running the real economics and one company who is asset-free, risk-free, and has a kind of gatekeeper role. This is the third element of it, and that's something where I would possibly expand a little bit later. So if we look at the first roaming, we do it between all the different cities so that you can use the same price. In order to do so, you have to map the different type of cars between the different organizations to define in internal contracts, okay, this type of car is going to be this price group in the other car sharing company. We would have the roaming trips all on the same bill as the bill that I get at my home. And you can use that via app, via web, via call center, open the cars via app, all with chip card. And to have a vision on it, it's about 3 to 10%, depending on the regional situation, that this kind of roaming adds to the turnover. So when you have, let's say, Brussels having a lot of car sharing in the very vicinity around it, then you have a lot of roaming. And if you have, like, looking on the map, something like a city of Bielefeld, there's not much around there where you would not have a lot of roaming because there's no many customers using it.
Joachim, if you could, like in 2 minutes, round up, that would be great. We can come back to this the discussion. Sure.
I'm pretty close to finishing it. The second one is Intersystem. So it's another booking system. EBOS where we cooperate, and there you cannot use it up to now with the app, so you cannot open the car with the app, but the rest is there. And of course, we need to exchange data, like Ina said, for that special trip into the other system, and all the in-depth service needs to be done by the call center of this company who runs the cars. So you transfer personal data as well, but then give the raw trip data back into the other system to calculate it in the pricing of the customer. And this all in all, because there's this brand break, this is just something like 0.5% up to 1% of the turnover that it allows. And the third element, there will be Como, which is to create a common product towards the mass companies in order to allow us to keep the sharing in car sharing and not give away the relation to the customer. So that now Bram can take over.
Thank you, Joachim. If there are some questions in the meantime for the Q&A, please ask them in the chat box. And I would like to give the words or the floor now to Tony, who will introduce us into the shared mobility platform.
Thank you, Bram. You can hear me?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. So my name is Tony de Ruiter. I represent Share4Mobility. Share4Mobility is in fact a very young company. It's founded end 2020 by 10 large Belgian dealer groups, so car dealer groups, wanting to develop a car sharing service in their region. But they didn't want to invent the hot water, each one of them in their region. So they came together and founded one company supporting all those regional labels. So for now we have about, as I told, we're really young, so we have now about 130 vehicles, and they're practically all electrical vehicles. We have in 1 year now about 5,000 users, and of course wanting to grow. I think it's important to understand that we are really aiming for rural areas. So we're not in cities, in small cities maybe, but our focus is really on small villages where for the moment there is no car sharing activity present. We like to be really hands-on, and if you ask us what do we do about interoperability, where is our activity and our beliefs, we have 4 main fields, and I think 3 of them were already explained by Ina at the beginning. But the first one is more related to our base as a car dealer groups. So I think we start with an interoperability between different business models, and then I mean we have a fleet of vehicles already to rent as courtesy cars, as demo cars, and in order in a market that's not very mature already, and then I refer really to the small villages, we find it interesting to share business models, or to be able to switch easily between business models on the same vehicle, and that allows us to put more shared vehicles on the road, because we can also gain money on switching function from time to time. So that's the first kind of interoperability, and then a second kind is inside a single platform. I'll explain that later. Also between different platforms, and of course connected to a mass application. We're not doing everything at once, of course, and we're for some business models and for some kinds of interoperability, we're still looking, investigating all facts before really jumping into the case. At the right of the slide, you can see where we are with the different in these different scopes. The thing we are really we have really developed, and we have quite some experience, is the interoperability inside a single platform. So in fact, Share4Mobility is a supporting company for all of those local car share companies. But in fact, to final customer, this is something that's really transparent. They don't see the difference between a car from, for example, Passman Share in the east of the country, or Fox Share in the west of the country. It's one application. All the cars have the same visual identity, have the same prices, have the same conditions. So all of this is centralized, but the strength of the business model is that it's a local servicing behind it. And also, because since these are all local businesses, there is also a strong connection to the customer already. It's recognized. It's a mobility provider that already existed, so that's something that gives confidence, and certainly in the rural areas, and also links to politics and things like that. So things can move. That's interesting. In one of the reasons why we created this is to share also the know-how. So not everybody in his own corner has to reinvent everything. Share common the conditions and everything, the documents. Also centralized administration, follow-up, invoicing, things like that. That's as rather specific to this type of business. Not unimportant, because we try to do everything rather low budget, is we can spread investments. So when we put theory, when we put 100 cars, that means 10 cars for every company. That's not so. That's from the investment side, it's not so big effort. And combine, of course, and I think that's the main strength, the national relevance with a hyper local service.
Don't if you could round up in a minute would be nice.
Yep. Okay. For the final customer, the only thing he sees is this, like you see it on the map. That's one service, one type of. We also study the interoperability between different platforms. There we are. We have now won a tender in with a few villages where we in fact had an offer together with another partner, together with a concolleague in car sharing. And we are now investigating to see how we can manage all of those things. So instead of having big studies before, we just decided, both of us, and we are both of us, we are small car sharing companies. We just decided, okay, let's go for it, and let's look into every aspect as we are running. In the meantime, the big advantage is that we can reach different target groups, even though the two are still not connected and working besides each other. And that brings me at the end of my quick presentation.
Thank you, Tony. We will come back definitely on this in the Q&A. So I'd like to give the floor now to Lucas, who will give us an introduction in the mobility factory. So I think Tony has to. Yes, that's great. The floor is yours, Lucas.
Thank you very much, Bram. Thank you also, Ine, inviting us here. Let me share my screen as well. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Lucas Reichel. I'm from the Mobility Factory and from Mobilitat. I'm very happy to be here. It's very nice in this ambience because also the people who just talked before, we see a lot of similarities. I think we want to achieve very similar things, perhaps with a little bit different means or in different ways, but it's yeah, we all are really convinced that car sharing and especially electric car sharing is the way to go forward to make a better world. The Mobility Factory is a cooperative. It's a European cooperative enterprise. So our members are all cooperatives. And we had, from the beginning, we had the idea to follow the example of energy cooperatives, which is a very successful thing which is happening in Europe, that many citizens want to produce and own their energy production and share the cost, share the investments, and doing this in a cooperative way. And it's always, we talk about consumer cooperatives. So the users are the owners of the enterprise. I will start to present one of our members. It's also where I'm coming from, and Ine asked me to present some of the data, so I will do that. It's a cooperative we founded 5 years ago in Spain. We have now about 2,500 members and a little bit over 60 cars. And it's also a very similar principle, I go fast here, to have local groups within Catalonia who want to organize their own mobility, and Mobilitat provides them with centralized billing and booking system and telephone hotline. And as we already heard before, so it's quite a similar approach. We only have electric vehicles from the beginning. 5 years ago in Spain, this was quite an adventure. Now it gets more and more normal. And we also provide services, combined services to individual users, which are members in our case, also public administration and local companies. It's important to note that this makes it viable in rural areas. You need this combination of actors. If not, it's very difficult. Yes, and what is, perhaps I concentrate on this, which is a little bit different from the other presenters. So as we are a cooperative, it's very important the community aspect. Our members are not only users of the service, so they're also owners. They own the system, they own the cars, and they participate in the service. They can participate just in the local groups, organizing themselves, but also the idea is that they participate in providing the service, so they can participate in cleaning the cars, deciding where the new vehicles go. Or for example, also the usage rules. We just adapted our usage rules. What happens if cars come back late or not cleaned? And we decide together what are the consequences. So this concept, this cooperative concept, we also want to apply to the technology. And this is why we founded the Mobility Factory. It started together with Partago from Ghent. Partago was first developing their own IT platform, but in Mobilitat and also Partago saw that this is a much too big burden for small companies like we are, and we have to join our forces to be able to make a good and competitive software. And this is the principal idea of the Mobility Factory, to join forces between cooperatives. And we organize this just again in the way of a cooperative. So the local, or let's say regional operators, are partners, are members of the Mobility Factory, and we apply the same principles as every cooperative now to software development. So we have a democratic governance. The members, they decide on what features are implemented next. Everybody pays the same price, and everybody invests somehow in the company. We are still small when we compare to the numbers we saw before, but also we're growing. And yeah, we also saw the Corona gap. We have developed now a complete platform. For the moment, our members mainly just use the same platform, and it's a different customization. So they operate under their own brand. They are completely independent companies. They also have their own business model. They have their own pricing. So we just act as a provider to them for the IT. Yes, I will skip this just to show the potential of the energy cooperatives. It's also, we see that there's a strong link between sustainable shared and mobility and sustainable energy. So we should work together with them. When it now comes to intercooperative roaming, for us, it's quite simple. It's a logical step to do this. We have that in mind from the beginning, from our first presentations 4 years ago to do it. It's quite easy because all of us use the same platform, and as cooperatives, also the topic of competition between us, it is there, but it's not so dominant, because we all somehow are active in a defined region. We all have an identity, a regional identity, and also a cooperative from the statutes, from its foundation. Its main goal is to serve its members with a good service. We don't have to maximize return on investment. So we see we are in a really good position to do this. And two of our members, Partago and Gobstrom in Flanders, they are somehow the pioneers. They show us the way to go. And they already started intercooperative roaming, and they even founded a network for cooperatives for doing the roaming. And so these networks, it's them too, but also a lot of energy cooperatives. So the members of these energy cooperatives can participate even if these energy cooperatives for the moment don't have cars, but the way is open for them to become also a member of the Mobility Factory and start operating their own systems. Yeah, that's from my side.
Thank you, Lucas. Very interesting and a different approach than our two other speakers, I would say. I would like to ask to Tony and Joachim to switch on the cameras and to join a little bit of discussion we will have, because I have some questions for you. And one of the questions, and I think many of the people who are joining today are interested in that, is about the technical challenges and opportunities. So let's say for the internal roaming, I think that's the most easiest part. But going towards cross-platform interoperability, what would you define as the main technical challenges and opportunities from your point of view? And maybe we can start with Joachim, if you have something to say to that.
Okay. Yes. When we started the interoperability between the Stadtmobil people, so EBOS as platform system, and Cambio, one of the first things we found was that it should be very easy for the people using the system. That meant we wanted to have the same price structure and the same price. And since we would not go for saying, okay, Stadtmobil Berlin will ask the same price as Cambio Brussels or whatever, and try to do it this way, we agreed to say, okay, everybody is going to use the car in the different city for the same price he's paying at home. So, and since one company is maybe using VWs and the other is using Fords and the next one's using Citroën, you have to do some kind of mapping behind the scenes where you say, okay, these types of cars are going to be this price class, and this price class means at that organization this pricing, and at this organization that pricing, in order to keep it very simple for the customer at the end, so that a person coming from Bremen knows immediately what's going to happen when he books or she books a car in Ghent. And we started out with that. So the general idea was just the customer brings his price list. And what Lucas mentioned is very important as well, since we started as locally independent companies. There's very little competition. So Stadtmobil is almost not operating in cities where Cambio is, and so on. There are very few overlapping things. So the idea of just supporting each other by enlarging the network and the use for the people is much stronger than any things of trying that you might take away usage and turnover of customers from the other. So and I think this is the whole question of having a good balance in the interests of the company serving the system is crucial to make it work.
Okay, Tony, I know you are developing this cross-platform interoperability or examining it. Can you tell us what are your main experiences there from a technical point of view? Yeah, indeed, and we are really looking into all different kinds of possibilities in connecting these platforms, and there are different ways, of course, to do so, and the challenge will be to find the good balance between something that works really well for the customer and meets his expectations on the one hand, and on the other hand being affordable to the car sharing company. So I think if the deep dive we made for now in the first project we are trying to connect is that first stage you can connect the fleet management tools, the administration tools of each company, because every car sharing company has its own system, its own fleet management tool, and its own telematics system, its own device in the vehicle. I think the most easy way to connect is between fleet management tools. So you can already synchronize plannings. However, this is still rather expensive because you practically need two devices in a car in this kind of solution. Then you have a kind of light interoperability of applications, whereas you have a car which is from company A, and if you want to use the smartphone from company, the app from company B, you want to use this vehicle A, then you do not connect to the telematics in the vehicle, but you pass through the fleet management tool, who is connected with the fleet management tool of the other party, and opens over the air the vehicle. And this is a bit less reliable, but for 95% of the time could work as a B option. And then of course you have the fully integrated interoperability of apps, whereas both smartphone apps really connect directly through Bluetooth with the car, but this
this will mean a whole lot of more IT development. So it's a choice between how far can you go financially and what are the expectations of the customer. In our case, in rural areas, I think our strategy will be more like, this is your standard car, but if it's occupied or if you really need another car, you have a system light where you can, with your application, open another type of car.
Okay. And Lucas, from your side, what's the technical challenge there, you think?
For us, in our current example, it was somehow the easiest of the low-hanging fruits, because these are very similar cooperatives. They have the same pricing system. They also have the same access to the cars, so members have to invest the same amount of money to become a cooperant. So many things were quite easy, and for us it was important to be able to show on the map that all cars are as easy accessible if there's Partago car or Gopstrom car, but we wanted to show it because the members, they have an identification with their cooperative, so they want to see if they're using a Partago car or a Gopstrom car. When it comes now to integrating it with other members, for us, the technical questions are not in the center, let's say. And yeah, we always try to first make it very clear how we want to work and what we want to do before solving the technical part. I think it's not the most difficult part here. It's more a business and let's say a philosophical question and of a strategy question. No, for us, it's quite logical to integrate with other cooperatives within our network. How we integrate with non-cooperative companies, this is more difficult to decide. I think that is where we have to do the work, no, the strategic work. What makes sense, and as Joachim said, we have to see this balance of interest. What makes sense for our members and what does not make sense for them.
Okay, Joachim, you had something to add, I think.
Yes, I would like to point out that there is a difference between whether you say I want to have interoperability or roaming within the same platform or cross platforms. And when Tony was talking about the different strategies to make this, I wanted to add, we found the easiest way is really to transfer the customer. So when I, as a customer, want to make a reservation in a different company, it's shown on the map and everything like that. And then I want to make a reservation, let's say in Hanover, which is Stadtmobil Hanover. Then I'm asked, do you want to transfer your data to this company? And then I say yes. And from that moment on, we just handle me personally in the system of Stadtmobil Hanover as I would be a customer there. Okay, so and then opening the car and whatever, and all assistance topics when I get late or the previous users getting late or there's a damage or whatever are handled like I would be a customer. So the interfacing challenges are very small if you accept that. And this is again, and I will come back, Lucas, to you. If you're on a level together with the other companies that you feel that's okay, they will not use, Hanover will not use the contact to me to take me out as a customer of Cambio and bring him to be a customer of Stadtmobil. And that's because the general role is the same, and the business conditions and the business cooperation is very strong, because we all come from a, let's say, very ecological part. We are businesses now, but that's our background. So we're fairly able to do this. And if you do not want to share the customer, so we come from the sharing business, and we're not only sharing cars, we're sharing customers. And if you do not want to do that because the risk of for your business is too high, then it's getting much more difficult to find technical solutions.
That's a that's a very good point, I think, from your side. And I want to add for a question I want to add on that is it's about trust. And do you have any advice on how to create this trust relationship between operators? And a second question, it's not only about other operators, but it's also about going to mass, and how I think trust is also very important there. So maybe if you have anything interesting to say about this, how to create trust amongst operators and also towards the mass platforms. Maybe Tony or Lucas want anything to say to that?
I think trust is it helps if we're, for the moment, rather complementary instead of real competitors. So transferring a customer is not a real risk, but it's just a good way of handling and assuring the mobility of our user. So in that case, I think risks are low, and we can really openly work freely together without having too much risk.
Perhaps I could add. We have quite a trustworthy relationship, just like because of the structure we build up. But still, it's we have to be very careful, because we're somehow trained and educated, and the whole environment of businesses and our lives, it's very centered in competition. And when you have to present a business plan or whatever, it's always growth and competition, and then how you can take over the others. And you have to overcome this somehow. You have to overcome it when you become a user of a car sharing, and you get rid of your own car. You don't have anymore the biggest and the nicest and your personal car. But as companies, if we want to cooperate, let's say, we also have to overcome our egos a little bit. And I think it's more on this level, and the cooperative structure helps, but it's not just because you're a cooperative you feel easy to cooperate. It's you have to make this own effort to do it, and it helps a lot, I think, if you already collaborate on other fields. No, you can use common services or provide services to each other, so you can start collaborating before, as Joachim told, handing over the customer, which is somehow the most intimate part, let's say, of a company. But it's not an easy task.
Interesting. Joachim, you have anything to add? Because I think also towards mass, that's the reason why one of the reasons why you created the Como network, right?
Yes, but maybe looking at the time, maybe it would be a good idea to talk about mass, probably on a second workshop sometimes. At least that would be my suggestion when we have only 6 minutes left. I would maybe like to add to the thing that Lucas said. One of the most crucial moments about competition is when you're operating in the same system, in the same city, sorry. And at that moment, so as long as you're just different regions, different cities, it's very easy to share information, know-how, ideas, technology, whatever. And when we look at Berlin, there's Stadtmobil Berlin and there's Cambio Berlin, and about the same level, about the same size. And as I said, we are using a a system where the customer pays his, let's say, local tariff. Then of course, if I have a very cheap local tariff, I'm very attractive to customers. And when I then use the cars of the other company at a very cheap price, then so I do the marketing and the other one has to clean the car for very little money. And in order to avoid that, for instance, we have agreed that in Berlin, we will pay a much higher price between each other. So it's fairly easy that Cambio will earn less money from the customer for a trip with a Stadtmobil car than we have to pay to Stadtmobil for that trip. Reason is, we are kind of using the work of Stadtmobil of building stations and setting up a service. And the only thing we have to do is to attract the customer and let him ride there. So that would be not fair. So what we do is we level out this kind of, let's say, pre-served work by paying it via the use. So of course, this is the totally opposite way of thinking when mass systems approach us. They usually say, we're bringing a lot of usage because we are going to gain the customers. So you have to be cheaper for us. We put it the other way around. You, Stadtmobil, you're adding to the service quality for our customers, so we pay you well. And the other way around as well. So both companies, Stadtmobil and Cambio, have not the interest of just only gaining the customers and let the others do the work, but everybody has really the interest in serving cars and raising the quality of the service, having more stations and so on. And maybe even say, okay, I do not so much in marketing because, yeah, serving the customer is really an attractive job. And so this is what I meant by balancing interests. And I just did not talk about Como because opening up that topic with 2 minutes, it's just doesn't work out.
But I think these are very wise and inspiring words from your side. And I think I agree that we can do another webinar about mass because this is a topic that, I mean, all of us were very interested in that, and 1 hour is simply a bit too short. But I see there's a question in the chat, and this was actually my last question for you guys as well. Is there in this field, is there a specific role governments can play to support you, or yeah, do you have anything interesting to say about that? Because I think governments can play a role in this field. And now it's remains silent.
Trying to be polite and see whether Lucas or Tony want to say something first.
Yeah, Lucas, do you have anything to add to this?
I'm just thinking. Yeah, it's of course government can do a lot to support car sharing in general by providing a place and good conditions. But yeah, for the roaming itself, I don't know. So I pass on.
Oh yes.
I think oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Tony.
Okay. But I think in general, it's local governments and especially in our case, since we are really operating in rural areas, so in small villages where market is not yet very mature, and the car sharing market, I mean. Of course, there is a huge role for these local governments to support car sharing companies. Now, your question was more about how can they support, how do you need to support this interoperability between this roaming between car sharing companies. I think it's important for them in a market that's not yet very mature to have access or to to support or to aim on as much groups of people, and as Lucas said, he's working with corporations. That's a different kind of people as the people we work as our users. So it would be more interesting, in fact, for a local government to invest or to aim on those two public groups and to support both of them, and maybe each buy one car. In fact, instead of two cars from one company, which is aiming only on half of the people in the village.
Okay, some last words from Joachim.
Yeah, maybe. Yes, of course, there are a lot of possibilities. Local government and municipalities can support car sharing. But with respect to interoperability, I think we would have to come back to that as soon as we discuss MaaS. Because a lot of local authorities want to create MaaS platforms. And we especially are fond of city authority or public transport run MaaS instead of, let's say, Amazonized MaaS or whatever. So we would like to have the cities create MaaS platforms where local bicycle, local car sharing, and so on comes together. And the role of the cities could be there to really create a kind of level playing fields that really ensures that let's say the customer holder or the gatekeeper is not the one to rule the world, but to really bring the companies together to make a good service on a way that is good for all the companies. And I think so when we talk next time about MaaS, then there will be a lot of topics where local government can help a lot. And I've just seen this more specific question: how can we support non-profit organizations more than the others? Of course, I'm the wrong to ask, because we're trying to at least have a black zero, and that's what we're working at. But we're not working for getting rich. But what we can do, of course, is set ecological standards, so effects on car ownership and things like that, to say only when you reach that, when you really replace cars by your system. And I'm fairly sure that cooperative systems does that better than a share now system. Then you will get, let's say, for instance, public parking spaces or whatever. And this is possible to say we have ecological criteria that you have to fulfill in order to get local support.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm looking at the time. We are a bit running over time, so I would like to round up. What I take with me or take home from this webinar is that cooperation is for many parties very interesting, and that trust is also a very important one. And based on trust, that we can achieve a lot based on car sharing. So I would like to thank my colleague Ine for her presentation, and I really would like to thank Tony and Joachim and Lucas for being here. We will definitely come back. I think it's a good suggestion with a webinar about MaaS, and in the light of the eHubs project, we will definitely do this. So if you want to stay in touch with us or with eHubs project, I would say subscribe to the newsletter or follow our social media. So this is yeah, I would like to thank all the participants for being here, and see you soon, I would say.
Bye-bye, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye. Thank you.